today, Confronting the Crisis. My name is Joshua Sternfeld. I'm a Senior Program Officer in the Division of Preservation and Access at the National Endowment for the Humanities. Some of you may have participated in an open forum that I held last year in Savannah. This is a bit of an outgrowth of that forum. There was a lot of topics that were broached. Everything from education and training to new R&D, format obsolescence to equipment obsolescence. So this panel is structured similarly, although we have three very distinguished presenters today to continue that conversation in a bit more of a structured manner than the open forum. Their task is to throw out some of their own work and raise some very tantalizing questions and hopefully leave enough time for an extended Q&A session at the end. So again, the overall theme or topic for today's session is this intersection between conducting sustainable practices, but sustainable practices at scale. And I think all three of the presenters here will present very different perspectives and aspects of preservation work that probably all boil down to all of the difficult decisions that archivists and librarians must make on a daily basis. So if anything, this presentation is about decision making and how to make those hard decisions. So again, I encourage you all to, as you're listening to the presentations, to think of questions. My job is mostly to have assembled these great folk up here and to get out of the way and allow you guys to have a discussion. And with that, I don't think lengthy introductions are necessary for our presenters. All of you know Jean-Louis from IPI, a research scientist in the Permanence Institute. We have Chris Sinek, president of AMIA, and we have Rachel Stolce, director of the Moving Image Archive at Indiana University. So with that, I'm going to invite Jean-Louis up to present first. So thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So, I will try to get 10 minutes. So, I will certainly not talk about everything I would like to talk, but I think I try to put the main thing in place here. So the first thing I wanted to say is I sympathize a lot with archivists because it's a difficult job. First, the cultural heritage really must be, I forgot one word here, preserved, and often they deal with, not much resource, not much money. Then of course they heritage about media with, often the permanence of the media was not the main thing for the people who develop those media. So we end up with a lot of those materials that we want to keep for a very, very long time, but there is always something in those media that is a weak link. So sometimes it might be the plastic support, sometimes it might be the image material, sometimes it might be the binder for tape, for example. So this is really a difficult challenge, and I think we learn how to deal with it. So the first thing, again, the archivists were really on the front row there. They look at collection, and often they see that they have been seen thus damaged. So the first thing we try to do, and particularly in the 80s, from the 80s to now, is to understand really how those material, how those weak link of which material are degrading and find a way to maximize the stability, basically. So we kind of came with a solution in a way. When you look at all the different categories of decay that may happen, dye fading, vinegar syndrome, mold, mechanical damage, corrosion, I'm talking about, for example, silver corrosion of black and white film, you can really trace a link there to temperature and humidity. So temperature and humidity are certainly a very, very important part to play if you want to protect those original material. We are talking here about physical preservation. So this is one thing. What archivists can do? Well, if you look at this, just a few things what they can do. They can store them properly. They can think about, they can check the condition and try to be as proactive as possible. They can find and use a new technology to save content. They can develop some strategy where there is a lot of moving part. And for some of you who went to the presentation about the strategy of Paramount, where there was a lot of technical solutions, there was a lot of things could be done to make those films again visible or being seen, right? But the point is, they certainly need to be there if you want to copy, digitize, scan. So that is why really looking at the environment is very important. So the other thing I like to say is that providing crop storage is like a mass treatment. The whole collection will really benefit. The one who are already on the way out and the way who are still in good condition. So that is a very, very important part of the strategy. So when I said do the math, okay. When I said do the math, I try to do myself the math, and I try to figure out how much it costs to duplicate or to scan one of these materials, and take even the worst scenario. Let's say I don't have an archive, I don't have a storage, and I will rent space to some of those commercial places. And actually, when you do this, you realize that for the price of, duplicating or reformatting, you can really store that material. I said several hundred years there. It's a lot of years that you can get. So here there is this notion of really buying time and make sure basically that these materials really will still be there when you have in place a strategy, when you have the resource, when you have the technical solution to really save the content and migrate into a new media. So this is what is at the core of the program. So because of that, we try to develop some strategies that are relatively simple to understand. Not all materials require the same environment to survive. There is differences there. So here again, doing survey, you came into a situation where you will find, okay, let's say polyester black and white in frozen storage. Doesn't need to do this, to be there. But a color material with chromogenic dye needs to be in frozen storage. So here, often we find solution which has been to move material from one storage to another, and then you have a better solution. So what is really important here is really to define the needs of the collections in relation to the nature of the material. This is the number one. So we found, and we were to talk about some tools here. I just mentioned that we can develop some tools to assess risk of losing those materials depending on the type of decay that we have, and always in relation to the material. The idea behind this is really to optimize the condition, to check it out, to monitor, and to follow up. The other thing is we almost are dealing with living material here. We talk about spontaneous decay of organic material. Of course, here you don't want to arrive to the third stage, okay? And very often we focus on this because you see such a thing. But if you really survey most of the collection, you will see that there is a certain percentage, maybe 10, 20, which means this 80% of the collection is probably on the second stage here. So you don't necessarily see distortion, physical distortion of the support and so forth. But yes, there's some acidity. Yes, the decay is happening here. But there is a key. You can still do something with that. And by the way, okay, if you think about the triacetate coming into the game here, 50s, now we are to 2015, 65 years. So right now, that is a point where a large proportion of the collection, if they have been stored in at-home condition in your office or something which is not cool or cold, they are actually just here, in the middle here, in terms of acidity. So the edit are a tool to do that and to detect and to be proactive. So the other tool that is a new tool for you, and I invite you to come tomorrow. This is my pitch, okay? At 9:45. We will talk about this particular web application. This web application is an educational tool. Okay? It's an educational tool, but also will allow you to make your own prediction and really take a step in the right direction. So one of them, you can focus what I call degraded film here, which is still film you don't see anything wrong. You can still scan, you can still duplicate, you can do something there, and you can by manipulating and providing a lower and lower temperature, you can keep it there and buy time and do those item by item and not mass treatment later when you have the possibility. So, so if you look, when I did this slide, I was thinking about this strategy that was really almost organic with preserving movie, which is basically duplicating. If you look at some of the issues in the 30s and everything, when the print was damaged, where you print another one, and then you had been a large copying program. Think about the Lumiere movie, for example, where they were on nitrate, and then they were put on acetate triacetate base. And you know what? If you don't store properly the triacetate base, well, 50 years later you have to do it again. And what should you do? To put on polyester? And so it's a really ongoing problem that you just, it's like pushing the camera straight. So by providing really this kind of storage, you in a way you stop and you think and you try to do a better use of your resources there. So what I like to say also is that preserving film heritage is not only about film. And what I mean, it's not only about tape. There is a wide range of materials that are kept in those archives. Professional publication, poster, and so forth. Still photograph, still negative. So every of those material, like audiovisual material, have the environment that you will maximize basically the stability of those objects. So that is also an important point. You don't necessarily need to put everything in the freezer. You don't necessarily need to put everything at cold temperature. But there is a nature of the material will dictate in a way what you should do. So now, and when we talk about sustainability, yes, maintaining proper storage costs money. And I did a little loop with a comparison between reformatting, duplicating, and proper storage. But what we are finding now is, first, steady conditions are not a must. Doesn't have necessarily to be, and that's for two reasons. Changing conditions are not necessarily creating extra decay on plastic or dye. This is one thing. The other thing is, if you allow yourself to think differently about what is the best storage I can do, what is the storage I can really afford. It's not necessarily the storage that will run 24/7. And there is experiment now that shut it off during the night, during 12 hours, a various period of time. What you find, if you monitor the condition in those spaces, there is such a mass of material, such a thermal mass, that actually you don't even see the temperature changing, just because of that. So, I don't want you to run back home and then turn off every night your freezers, okay? This is probably where we are going to go, because you certainly will have to do some of that, and 8 hours, that is 30% of the time. So again, you can do the math. There is a way. The other thing is, other avenue is controlling the moisture in the materials. And again, here, I will just say one thing. When you put a material in your storage, and instead it's at cold temperature, close to the freezing point, and you pay a lot of money to control the humidity, right? And you put your can there, it will take at least 6 months for the film to see really the real condition in the storage. So if you have some variation in that storage, the material will never see it if it's a short period of time. So those are the things you should think about, and we have lately actually 3 different projects funded by AMIA, actually. Thank you, Josh. Who look at this kind of thing, and this might look a little bit crazy here, okay? But believe me, it's not. So this line here, if you really monitor the condition in most of the space, and you look at the relative humidity, very often it follows the seasonal change. So you have those ups and downs. And this is it's really a slow, gradual changes, and the material has very often, because it's slow, the time to equilibrate it there. So if you don't want to go in the upper limit and the lower limit because it's too dry or it's too damp, there's different scenarios that we are trying to test. One is basically to cap those high. This means in this period of time here, where you will use the dehumidification system. The other one, those two here, is by controlling even step by step, or intermittently controlling the relative humidity. What you do, you can manipulate the equilibration of the materials, and to make sure that you will never go above those dangerous areas. So that's the way we could talk for a long time about this, but I just wanted to put it there. So at the end, I really, of course, I am convinced that providing the storage that collection needs, and again, nature of the materials and the condition. Because if the decay has started, you will need more stringent conditions. That is really important. And then the last point, which is on this slide here, trying to change the way we think about storage. And that 24 hours running, stable condition, is not necessarily providing a better environment for the collection. And you can really save some energy there. And I will leave it there for now.
Okay, hello everyone. So what I'm going to talk about is sort of viewing IU as a case study. So Indiana University, what we've done, sort of the mistakes, well, I shouldn't say the mistakes we made, the things we've learned what perhaps if you're actually planning a mass digitization of audiovisual material you might want to consider, things that were included in our budget, things that about 400 other people have had to step up and sort of solve problems for, that are helpful to think about. So, and what we're going to do with film. So, let's see how this works. Okay, so how we got to this point, so for those of you who don't know exactly what the project is, I'll go into more detail, but if you go back to 2008, 2009, on the IU Bloomington campus, there was a very thorough survey done of all the different, so libraries, rare books, archives, weird departments with rooms full of, closets full of weird stuff. So capturing all the information about data, like how many, what format, sometimes what the condition is, and sort of thinking through what stages we're in and sort of confronting the crisis, right? So are the discs all flaking off? Is there, trying to figure out what to do, right? So building a case for understanding what to do with it. So from that, Okay, so from that, the provost's office on campus put together this little team. So 6 of us served on this. It was then called the Media Preservation Initiative. We worked for a couple different years together, doing research, writing reports, going on field trips to places that had actually done huge mass digitization projects successfully, trying to figure out what to do. I would say that a crucial part here is also if you don't have the expertise to bring it in. So we brought in ABPS early on. So this is the picture with like the expanded working group. So Crystal Cynic was awesome. So it was like 6 plus Cynic for quite a few years. And basically that picture is to show you like, just do what Crystal Cynic says. Like, telling us what to do. But actually, really in truth, right? So if you don't actually know how to create a workflow and you can't make these elaborately detailed graphs that show like exactly how many hours and how many people and how many decks you're gonna need to do whatever, that was sort of a crucial part, right? Because you can't build a proposal without all the information. So that's my little Crystal Cynic plug. So that was our working team, right? So that's where that led. All that work went into creating sort of strategies and solutions for dealing with, and at this point we're still talking about audio, video, and film. So that was put out, the 2 reports are downloadable as PDFs online if you have any interest, although things have sort of changed from what we actually published at that point. So just to also understand the groundwork, so sometimes people ask me why things happen at IU the way they do, why we've been successful. And I think there are other factors, right, that always come into play in every institution. I think for us, there's this hugely, I would say first, bottom left, Herman B. Wells was the president of ours for like 50 years and was so supportive of collections that we have these remarkably unique collections, everything from all the stuff at the Kinsey Institute that he really protected. This was all collected at a time when it was all illegal to produce or collect, to ethnographic material, to everything in our rare book library. Our collections are really, really strong. Following that, we have an amazing library administration that does amazing support pretty much across the board for everything. And super skilled people with great expertise. Our IT support and data system is amazing apparently compared to other places. Okay, I know, George Block walks around with a picture of our data center on your phone, right? Yeah. Like I know, he gets really excited about our data center. Okay. It's pretty cool. Okay. Okay, so we have really cool stuff partnering up with like Northwestern University to create Avalon, which is going to provide access. Actually, we're using it now to provide access to digitized streamed material. Working with WGBH, where Kariani went, for Hydro Dam 2, for sort of future thinking about digital preservation in other ways. Our president is involved in Deepen. You know, that's not really up and running, but we're about to be, I think, a test beta case for that. So we have like all these things. So we have a gorgeous cinema, $15 million renovation of cinema. We've got lots of stuff going on. And a new media school. They brought in a bunch of different schools. So there's tons and tons and tons of support already for media and interest, and people want to do stuff with it. So, overarching idea is there was this groundbreaking stuff happening. And therefore, it was really easier to make a case, right? If you have an institution who doesn't really care, then your case is probably going to fall short. So, we had a nice little fertile ground to pitch all this. And then in 2013, a plan was proposed to deal with audio and video. And just to clarify, film was set aside partially because I think our plan was a 27-year plan and took like 5 scan-IDs and cost a lot more, and it was a lot more complicated. So it's been sort of set aside for now. So to clarify, we got $15 million. This is our president doing a big announcement. $15 million to digitize 250,000 plus audio and video objects over, I think it's actually in the next 4 years because he wants to hit our bicentennial of IU. So next steps for that, you got your money, try to figure it out with the spreadsheets and all the data done, figuring out doing it all in-house or working with a vendor. RFP went out to vendors. Memnon got the bid. Andrew DePuza's here. If you ever have any questions specifically, raise your hand, Andrew. He now lives in Bloomington. Memnon is a company from Brussels. They won the bid, negotiated, and now have an entire shop set up in Bloomington. We also have the same type of parallel track of IU. It's a stunning place, the two places right next to each other, but to deal with more fragile audio and video material. So they work sort of in tandem, and it's kind of spectacular. So what does $15 million cover? So this is what's always amazing to me. So really all this covered, even though my president's goals, if you actually read what the goal of the project was, included things like access, right? All it really covered though was to digitize, right? Stick it in the deck, 250,000 items, and storage of bits, right? But it wasn't even like long-term planning or any of the access stuff or cataloging or copyright. So I thought I'd just hit some of those things. And people always ask me what we're actually doing. So just for fun, so with the vendor, we're doing 259,111 items in 11 formats. That's what we're outsourcing, and those are the formats. Okay, so they renovated the space. They got it up and running this summer. I think May, June, July, somewhere in there. Has 8,400 square feet, 21 rooms. And it's actually, if you're ever near Bloomington, it is really, really phenomenal. It's very cool to see. Especially like I didn't have a picture of this where they wash the records. They have this like automated thing with like 7 records, 8 records, and it goes into these vats of washing stuff. It's actually kind of cool. Okay.
Picture of your phone?
No, I don't. Okay, so I was involved in the planning process, and I'm maybe going to be involved in the film part. What happened in the last 2 years, I don't have much to do with, so I can't talk about the operational stuff, and like I said, there are actually people in the room who can talk to you about this. So what I did is I went around and interviewed about 12, 13, 14 people who their whole jobs have turned over to dealing with MVPI, to talk to them about what they would actually do to make sure that people would include or what they wish people had done. So I'll kind of focus on a couple of different points. I know some of y'all have done big giant digitization projects, but for anybody planning to do something, we can cover that. So, and I work for the libraries. So I'm mainly speaking for the libraries here over and over again. A bunch of IT people are involved too, but the libraries, I think there are like 35 people whose jobs changed dramatically. They already had jobs, but they changed dramatically in focus to solve a lot of problems. So I'm going to take what I talked to all these people about and kind of merge them down into some major points. So prepping and tracking objects, right? Okay, 250,000 items, right? Little bitty items, and sometimes they don't have much information on them. So the MPI, as it was called originally, the Preservation Initiative, already had in place what they were calling SMART teams. So lots and lots of grad students, and SMART team stands for Strategic Media Access Resource Team. So they already had these people who could sort of make a lot of inventories. But what we didn't really have in place is how to track objects from the storage facility or 56 different units through the system, digitization, blah, 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 blah. So the libraries, 2 of their programmers have now developed a software system called PODS, and it stands for Physical Object Database. and it tracks things. So this is just one way that was solved, right? So now you have bins in the pod system, and people know where things are. So the students double barcode, the container, and the object. It's all in the pod system, like interacting nicely. Access. Okay, so right, we're digitizing 250,000 things, but does that solve any of the other things that are going to make you let anybody see this stuff ever? And again, this was always part of the big plan. It just wasn't exactly part of the funded plan. So the actual funded plan and that mission is going to be met in 4-year time. Digitization, storage, and bits. So access. Okay, the handy thing is, so this is the library, our library on campus. The handy thing is we have a ton of experts who deal with all access issues, right? So I'll just break that down, right? We're talking about access discoverability, we're talking about copyright, we're talking about cataloging, metadata, and physical like streaming service, like getting it to your people, right? So a lot of people have changed jobs basically and are working lots and lots on this. We're also bringing ABPS back in to help us sort of solve some of the big giant hiccups when we get these giant files back, what to do with them and how to deal with them properly is what's going to happen there. Also, in terms of long-term preservation, as I mentioned, we do things really well at IU for data and digital stuff. But as I said, I think investigations into Hydro Dam 2, which there's the big grant that they're working on, and Dr. Karen Guriani, if you want details about that. And then, like I said, deepen, I think, for long-term preservation. So there's still, this is all still a work in progress, is what I'm saying. Like we currently do have 2 locations of storage, but there's just not all the steps in place that you would actually call it a digital preservation repository. So, but it's getting there because we have really good people doing stuff. This part, so curation selection, right? So we have 560,000 items on campus, and we're digitizing 250,000. And we didn't talk about this. Are you talking about tools, selection tools? I was going to say, Crystal Cynic might be talking about this, so I don't have to talk about it. However, it's important, right? How do you make that distinction? And you can rely on your curator some, but are there tools in place that might be helpful? So we'll see if you want to bring that up. Feel free. The last thing, and this is just a funny thing. So there's all these humongous, big, giant things, right? And this is a smallish thing, and yet it's not. So this is a really good example. There were so many humongous examples of things that really need to be included in people whose whole giant workflows have to change. But when I talked to Andrew after they set everything up at the minimum side, you gave me like 3 or 4 really good stories that are good, because you would never think about cold water and hot water in your septic, and you would never think about lots and lots of weird things that make a difference. But the best example was, so they had this guy come in, so IU, big organization, people who order cable, they order cable for dorms, right? So coax cable, campus, right? Do they put it's high def that you needed, right? Okay. So somebody ordered a bunch of cable. The guy took 1 week or 2 weeks?
1 week.
2 guys. Two guys. Okay, 2 guys, 1 week. You know, all this cable, so synced up, right? And then after he was done, somebody noticed it wasn't high def cable. So we're talking about $100,000 worth of cable that was improperly installed. I mean, it was just a weird little oversight, but my point was all the little teeny tiny details that are actually kind of big details that took people's lives. And anyway, so that was my tiny example of you have to pay attention to all the details. So I actually work mainly with motion picture film. I am sending about 25,000 video and audio tapes through the system now. But as to film, and this is what people tend to ask me about a lot, that I just mentioned briefly, that we already digitize film. We have about a $50,000 a year budget. We work with 5 different vendors. We outsource already. However, as we're starting to look at what to do, I'll just go into it. We use the media collections online. I use a system that they developed with the Avalon system to provide access. We have only about, I think, 800 items in there. We provide free access when rights are clear, of course, but Avalon is really nice for basically most of my sort of educational films. If I can't get rights cleared, but somebody's in really little and they want to watch it, then we digitize it on demand, and then I make them register as an IU guest, and you can go in and just control access, which is really nice, or control it for class. So it's IU's way of sort of providing access in fair use context. and staying legal in doing so. We're also, one of our guys developed a tool that works Avalon and Omeka together, so we make these online exhibits when we digitize collections that we can easily stream. This is actually a really fun one, World War II propaganda films. We digitized about 212 of them, and they're really awesome. And we put them up in the exhibit like they were in, IU used to be a distributor of educational films, so the 1945 IU and war catalog, we actually based it on those categories, which is kind of great. So if you like that stuff, you should go and see it. And last, so we actually, it's always been a plan to digitize the 100 or so thousand film items on campus. Over and over again, we come back to this. The one thing I would say, this little pause in our plan has allowed us to do is to go back and rethink how to do some things. So we're right now in the process of hiring a film digitization specialist who is going to go back and get all of our data under control first, so that we can actually get real numbers, do film inspections, get best copies, and then we will have the real numbers to be able to present that are based on, like, if we had the elements for something versus the 26 release prints that we had, right? So our database right now might show like 800 things that we can't really tell what we're going to digitize. So we are moving forward. Hopefully in the next 15 to 16 months, we'll have a better plan about where to go with mass digitization of our motion picture films. So that was just like a humongous fast overview of what's happened in the last 5 years with audio, video, digitization, and film. And that's it.
First, I want to say happy birthday to Winter Shank. It's her birthday today. And Rachel, thanks for your kind words. You are too nice. So I'm going to throw just kind of a bunch of kind of ideas at you about strategies for confronting the crisis. I think one of the key words of the title is kind of at scale. As we think about the scale, how do we start to address this? So the first thing I want to talk about is you. Is coming up with new financial arguments. For years now, I think as a community, we've been struggling with this concept of answering the question that budget holders and decision makers have about return on investment for expenses made on preservation and digitization efforts, and historically our response is like something So it's important that we come back to those who are asking about this, because regardless of how compassionate and sympathetic of an ear we have in those who are controlling budgets, the reality is that the loss of cultural heritage, which has been the argument we have leaned on the hardest over the years, is not plugging into spreadsheets, which is what budget holders really have to use to justify expenses made. So one of the ideas that we came up with in response to this is the cost of an action calculator that starts to look at past investment is lost by not investing in digitization today. So we have a narrow window within which to act before we lose our audiovisual media to obsolescence and degradation. We have spent in staffing, in facilities, in moving, in software and hardware, in storage and HVAC, and all of these things in some cases for many decades. And if we do not act to save that material, to digitize it, to preserve it, that investment is lost. And you're able to use the cost of an action calculator. It's a free open tool at coi.avpreserve.com to start to build some financial arguments that you can take into meetings. And this is not an argument digitize everything. This is an argument to take an informed approach to start to look at what the implications are in this instance to a $600,000 per year scenario on digitization versus a $300,000 scenario. How much of your past investment do you save or lose? How many materials will you save or lose with a given investment? So that you can start to have some real information on the table to work with, as opposed to coming from an emotional place only. Not that the other arguments that we've been using over the years are not worthwhile and strong and good arguments to use, but we need to supplement them with financial information as well. The other thing I want to talk about is getting good data. In some ways, this points to Rachel's selection. But before we can do selection, of course, we need to figure out what it is we have. Many organizations really can't speak to what are in their collections with any real specificity. And so with that problem in mind, getting over that initial hump from going from a big question mark to saying we have X, we have X quantity of Y format, and start to get some real data. We developed this is an open source application, ABCC, that is a web-based tool for creating inventories of collections. It really uses the idea of using volunteer work or teams, kind of workforces, to help get intellectual control over collections so that you can start to generate some really good data. We've also developed another tool that we've used that's more complex, and this is not an open tool. This is one that we use internally, but it's a mechanism for generating inventories, again, in a very rapid way for large-scale collections that uses imaging as a primary mechanism for record creation, and the ability, it gives you the ability to take iterative passes at capturing metadata. Because you have the images available to you, so you're able to do things like manage a team to do this effort instead of traditional practices, which have looked like multiple people going out with spreadsheets and pads of paper and then trying to compile all this messy data later. You're able to do this in real time in a controlled way, and you can do a minimal set of metadata as a first pass. Use that to then prioritize where you'd like to drill down and create more metadata. As you start to find out more and more information about collections. And this is just a detailed view of that. This system is called Catalyst. And of course, once we have that data, we want to put it to use. And just to speak quickly to the selection aspect, is there's another tool I should mention, MediaScore, Media Rivers, which we developed in coordination with Indiana University. That's a free open source application that's available. There's a number of institutions using it, and the focus of MediaScore, Media Rivers, is to use technical criteria and what I'll call kind of intellectual criteria to prioritize collections. So for a given number of media, saying what should you do first, and it scores both technical and intellectual criteria to give you that. But in thinking about putting it to use, of course, there's the great work that Indiana University did that we just saw, and this starts with that having this core set of data. So that survey work that was done in 2008, 2009 was instrumental in them being able to take the next step to start to really do some strategic and financial planning, some technology planning to get the really compelling nitty-gritty information that they needed in order to raise the funds and make a case that there was a solid foundation and solid basis on which to build the NDPI initiative. NYPL followed in their footsteps. They saw the work that Indiana University had done and said, we'd like to do this similar. Of course, they went to Indiana University, they consulted with them. We were lucky enough to be able to work with them on this effort. We did a similar thing within NYPL. And just within the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of great movement that's come out of it, but within the past couple of weeks, the president of NYPL is committed to raising a significant amount of funding towards the preservation of NYPL's materials. So it's exciting stuff to see, and this is all based, again, just on generating that data and then putting it to good use, again, to put in front of budget holders and decision makers a solid plan for moving forward to be able to speak to the value of the outcomes, the expenses involved, and what the organization has to gain. I should also speak to UNC, Southern Folklife Collection has done a lot of great work in a similar way. We also, in thinking about tackling the challenges at scale, we've been working on taking that Catalyst platform and turning it into something that looks like Kickstarter, right? So funding, kind of a crowdfunding approach, item level funding of items. And there's a couple of things that are unique about this. One is that you offer the ability for people to contribute to the preservation of a single item, but the other interesting thing about this is that you're publishing information, these images and some metadata set, making it publicly available so that the public is able to engage with collections that have otherwise been hidden for many years in an interesting and I think great way. So using a platform like this to look at, this is not the answer, it's one answer, right? We look to multiple sources of revenue and resources to try to get this work done, and I think this is one that we haven't really seen yet. I was happy to see someone from NHF actually had something this morning in a presentation where they were doing something similar, and I was happy to see that. It's very cool. But other, under the same kind of umbrella, and Rachel talked about the MDPI public partnership. I'd point to Memnon again here. I think they've done some great work in this area with the French National Library. They did a project in which they digitized. Actually, the project is still happening. They digitized. There was, I think, around 70,000 discs that needed to be digitized, in which Memnon struck up a deal to do that digitization at a discounted rate in exchange for a back-end cut of revenue coming off of sales through iTunes and other platforms in which this was sold. Of course, this requires a situation that is a privileged one to be in, and that you know the rights and you have the rights and things like this. We would all wish for something like that. And while we're all not that lucky, I would point to Indiana University as a situation. It's another way to look at a public-private partnership that is not selling of content, where there is mutual benefit for both the private and the public partner. It takes some creativity to get there, but I think it's vitally important as a piece of the pie. The British Library is embarking upon a great project. Will Prentice just presented on this at the IASA conference in September in Paris. So they've gotten funding from the UK Lotto, and I would love to see US Lotto refunds come to preservation. Fantastic. This was the first time that they would ever successfully gotten funding from the Lotto there. It had always gone towards buildings and preservation of buildings, never towards audiovisual, so this was a big win for them. But what they're doing is taking a regional center approach, and again, this is something that we've heard talked about a lot over the years. But they've got a network, 10 centers that they're equipping, they're doing training, and they will have 10 centers operating independently, focused on a large corpus of work doing preservation, in which the British Library will then have a role in the longer-term visual preservation of that content that's being digitized. And of course, there's access being provided to the regional centers that are doing this work. So I'm very excited to watch this project take place. I think they'll do a fantastic job. They always do great work, and I can't wait to have it as a model to look at to use in other places. And I'll point to not-for-profit service providers. We have an audio preservation service coming out of Northeast Document Conservation Center, which is historically worked with documents. They got funding first to bring Irene. This is the machine that does the scanning of cylinders and discs from IMLS. They wanted to bring that to market, so they started there. And then they've gotten additional funding to really ramp up their audio preservation services, and over the next year we'll be ramping that up and begin to providing that. So I think that's it. Yeah. So you know, I think here I just throw out a variety of scenarios, a variety of approaches, things to give us some hope, some ideas, some inspiration, to start to think about various ways that we can tackle the challenge that we have in front of us of preserving and making these materials accessible. I'll say one last thing about the access side of the Indiana University project is I think that this is another going to be a great model in which we're looking at mechanisms for systematically approaching metadata generation, management, and of descriptive, administrative, and rights metadata in order to, in kind of a massive way, categorize, group materials in a way that tells us how we can make them discoverable, but also making some rights determination choices and permissions choices associated with those available. So I think it will be. I think in many ways it'll be a very innovative project about some great discussions and looking at where our community is headed and next steps past digitization. What does that look like? How do we make these materials accessible? And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
I think we have some time for questions from all of you.
Question so I'm a little surprised at your comment about the development constant temperature. So that's complete for decades, and I'm just curious, on some of your slides you have frozen as one of the best solutions in some cases. Fluctuating back and forth from the material probably is not great. But the second piece is, when you talk about fluctuating, so you saying you can shut off the air for 7 hours every single day and not have any problem with the immediate, forget the frozen stuff. I'm just talking, I'm at 45 degrees and I can turn off the air every night for 7 hours, small hours, if I want to go 7 to 7, right? Non-active service.
Right.
There's no impact.
Right. There's two aspects in your question. The steadiness of temperature and even relative humidity. This idea came from way back in museum environment and so forth, and has been, you know, the optimum become the thing to be achieved. So, and I think it was in mid-90s actually, we did several studies who look at the effect of cycling condition in terms of temperature and also humidity on the chemical stability of materials, such as we took 2 guinea pigs basically, one being the paper and one other being acetate film. Both of them being, you know, fast decaying material, and we have to struggle with that. So the idea was to compare different scenarios, ones where the temperature was, for example, steady at a certain level, and another one was fluctuating, and see if there was any extra, what I call any extra decay, something that we can't really explain by a thermodynamic effect. What we found out at the time was that what counts really is the time that the materials spend at every condition. So the chemical decay, I tried to explain simply here, it's a one-way street, okay? If you put your thing in a frozen storage, the material will not go back, okay? It will just stop to decay, let's say. So if you put at 50, it will degrade at a certain rate. If you put at 70, it will degrade faster. So we find a way, an algorithm actually, to predict those different changes. And that is what it's about. If you look at the website that I point to, the E-Climate book, there's an algorithm there, which is Telugu PI. So this is based on this particular approach, who allow you to estimate the impact of changing condition on the chemical stability of the materials. But the fact that it's changing doesn't cause extra decay. I'm not telling that, you know, you can have a better situation with, the thing changing, but you are roughly at a low temperature, and then a steady temperature or slightly higher, actually the steady would be worse. And I am talking about chemical decay here. Okay? So the second aspect of the question is, why you are telling me that if I stop my HVAC system during the night, it will not do anything. First, do the experiment. And you will see, okay, talking about temperature, depending on the building as you have, depending on the mass of material that you have, you can literally stop for half a day, and you will see just maybe a few degrees going down or up, depending if you are in the winter or if you are in the summer, okay? If you talk about moisture, and I will stop there, it's even worse, because it's even better situation because everything is much, much slower to, it will take literally weeks, months actually, for a material to see any change of relative humidity, for example, a film which is inside a can. So you can allow yourself to some changes in the microclimate. What it counts is the air around the materials, basically. So it's a long answer, but it's sometimes a complicated question. Satisfy you? Or?
Yeah, but the impact also for all is fairly large. The impact of powering up and powering down the equipment could also have a negative.
Yes, you will. That is true. When I said, you will say 30%, it's not exactly true. So we did, okay, just to put you, to give you a little bit more data, we did a 3-year project with 5 different archives spread around the country, different climate zones, and the idea was to optimize what they have, to make sure that the system was working properly, and to experiment that way. That means shutting off during the night, during weekend, when there was nobody, and the project looked at really the condition inside this climate. Does it go into adverse conditions for the collection? That's the one. And then estimating the savings that you get from that. And the result was really, really positive. So that is we are looking further in that direction and to, because we needed to look at solution anyway.
Jean, if I can follow through, I share Stephen's astonishment.
Right.
So was it a controlled environment, like the staff were going in and out, the door wasn't being constantly open, so to impact the interior environment?
Say it again.
What was the controlled environment? So when you did the test, because I'm imagining, okay, it's great, I mean, I love the idea about shutting down the home.
Right.
But then what if staff are going in and out, it's a working storage environment, rather than open or closed?
Well, that can certainly be an impact. But again, put data logger in your storage. Monitor continuously the conditions. And not only for 1 week or 1 day, but at least 1 year. In many, many instances, you will see impact from the different seasons. So you will have, damp summer or fall, depending where you are, okay? So that is a factor. The second factor is effectively people going in and out. But, in fact, okay, this is the next direction I am interested. This is the next project I want to apply, actually, that you pulled me. What I really observe, both in the field and in the lab, when you have a place like a storage space is full of stuff, what we are preserving is hygroscopic materials. They are like sponge. There is a lot of water in the gelatin, in the paper, in the binder of the tape. There's a lot of water. And the air, there is not much water in the air. So what happened when the condition, even if the conditions are going drier or actually damper or more humid, is that the collection take an active part in controlling its own environment. So the first thing that if it goes drier, actually the collection will release some moisture. Because you want actually to acclimate it to the lower relative humidity, okay? And by doing that, actually the collection is buffering the change. So now what I like to say is we don't provide entirely the environment to the collection, but actually the collections that we are taking care of are also contributor in buffering and controlling the space. So that is what I'm talking about here. And that has changed completely the way we look at.
One more question.
I was just going to give a real-world example. I'm from the British Film Institute, and we operate a master film store at -5 degrees Celsius and 35% RH. We moved our collections in 2011. We've been operating at those conditions since then. And following some recent modelling, we've decided to turn our store off overnight and at the weekends. And through the testing, we noticed no noticeable shift in temperature or RH over those periods, but we model that it will save us in the region of $61,000 in utilities costs each year.
Everybody hear that? I would be happy to.
I think we're all going to stay afterward if you have follow-up questions, but I think and exciting ideas have been put forth into the community and for continued discussion. So thank you all for attending this panel and enjoy the rest of the